Hello everybody, this is Kirby over yonder. Before we start the actual video, I just have one little thing to say. So this was supposed to include the most recent Treehouse of Horror episode, the one that's airing this year. But that got delayed to November 1st because of a baseball game. So that's fun. Um I basically, so what I decided to do, I asked people on my Discord server if they'd rather have the video be up before Halloween but not be able to include the most recent episode, or after Halloween so we can include that episode. And more people said that they'd just rather have it out before Halloween, so that's what I'm doing. I really wanted to include the most recent episode, but I guess it just don't work like that. Stupid freaking sports. It's funny because I think in one of them, like Kane and Kodos mentioned that, like, oh, we're doing the Halloween special, but it's already November or something like that. So that's funny. Alright, enjoy the video. Hello everybody, this is Kirby over yonder, and would you look at that? It really do be the spooky month. And one of my favorite spooky months traditions is watching the Treehouse of Horror episodes of The Simpsons. At their best, these segments show just how much creativity the Simpsons team has when the show isn't grounded by reality. But at their worst, they can be pretty lame parodies that just feel slapped together for the sake of having a Halloween show. So let's find out which ones spook and which ones stink by reviewing every Treehouse of Horror episode in 10 words or less. So just keep in mind that usually when I'm marathoning the Treehouse of Horror episodes, I typically stop sometime during the middle seasons, so this is actually my first time seeing most of the HD era Treehouse episodes. For the ratings this time around, we have bad, mediocre, okay, good, great, and amazing. Also, for each episode, I will be showing what my favorite segment from them is, labeled under FS. The only one that actually takes place in a treehouse. What if Bart turned me into a pickle? Funny stuff. HS. Homer Simpson. I love the irony in Flanders being the devil. David Letterman. How does the CG hold up this well? Hooray! Slightly outdated but still amusing political commentary. A good season 9 episode? Witchcraft. What a fucking spooky episode. Expand, Bart. Yo, Homer's a Taurus? Me too. Really? A Harry Potter parody? Insert furry joke here. This episode with the Grim Reaper and the stopwatch. This be a fun episode, I say. Bart has non-canonically killed an innocent hobo. Guys, did you know that Homer is fat? The E.T. parody is lame, but the rest is enjoyable. Good grief. Criss Cross. Still a better Twilight than Twilight. Fart noise. Cinnamon. This one's alright, I say with delight. I'd watch this while drinking a frosted chocolate milkshake. Way to waste a good Kelsey Grammer performance. I've never seen anything more disturbing than Homer cannibalizing himself. Phone bad. I'm falling asleep. So, as you can see, we have 2 bad episodes, 3 mediocre episodes, 4 okay episodes, 10 good episodes, 8 great episodes, and 3 amazing episodes. Overall, I'd say the Treehouse of Horror episodes are fairly consistent in terms of their quality. Sure, like with the entire show, the classic era is definitely the best in terms of Treehouse of Horror, and there are some not very good ones in the HD era, but there were some good ones. In fact, Treehouse of Horror 20 in particular surprised me with how good it is. I think a big part of what helps these episodes is the fact that they're just one-off, non-canon stories. Sure, seeing Homer act like a selfish, inconsiderate jerk is obnoxious in an episode like Kill the Alligator and Run. However, in a Treehouse of Horror special, it's not really that bad, because these are obviously exaggerated versions of the characters. I think a lot of the weaker Treehouse of Horror segments are the ones that are just boring parodies of things that aren't even horror related. A lot of them, such as the Harry Potter one or the E.T. one, don't really add anything to their source material and just feel like bland retellings. I'm not saying parodies are inherently bad, they've done some pretty great ones over the years, it's just that a lot of the later ones feel very sloppily put together. Like, try watching the Stranger Things segment from Treehouse of Horror 30 without having seen the actual show, and tell me you understand what's going on. But hey, now I'm just stalling. Here are my top 3 favorite and least favorite Treehouse of Horror episodes. For the third worst, we have Treehouse of Horror 29. First segment in this episode is an Invasion of the Body Snatchers parody, where Apple is run by a bunch of aliens trying to steal people's bodies. It's pretty much one huge phone bad joke. It's really not funny. Did you get the joke? People can't see the aliens because they're too busy looking at their phones. Haha, so funny. Hey, there's a reference to Futurama and Disenchantment. That's pretty cool, I guess. Second one is about Lisa locking up Bart, Milhouse, and Nelson and planning on killing them. This one's probably the best of the 3 due to Yeardley Smith's really good voice performance, but it doesn't really go anywhere and just kind of ends up being a lol woman be crazy joke. And we end on a Jurassic Park parody where all of the senior citizens in Springfield turn into dinosaurs. I really don't have anything to say about it. It's a pretty lame parody. I feel like the term lame describes this one pretty well. There's nothing downright horrible about it, but there's nothing that makes me want to go back to it either. It's just very forgettable. For the third best, we have Treehouse of Horror 6. Now, this is a good one. The first segment, Attack of the 50-Foot Eyesores, is probably the least amazing of the 3, but it's still really fun seeing these mascots come to life. Plus, it has one of my favorite lines, "He came to life." Good for him. Nightmare on Evergreen Terrace is definitely my favorite of the 3. There's some great dreamlike visuals in it, especially the beginning of the segment that's animated to look like a Disney movie. It just looks gorgeous. And the groundskeeper Willie makes for both a really funny but also genuinely scary antagonist. This one also has some pretty great jokes too, like Willie slowly burning to death, as well as Homer's line, "Don't touch Willie." Good advice. And the final segment, Homer Cubed, is definitely one of the most ambitious Treehouse of Horror segments to date. The CGI still holds up really well even to this day. Definitely gives off a very eerie vibe to the whole segment. And come on, you gotta love that ending where Homer goes into the real world. It's just amazing. For the second worst, we have Treehouse of Horror 26. You know it's a bad episode when it starts off with an intro animated by none other than John K. It looks awful and ends with an absolutely disgusting front-facing Marge. No thank you. The first segment is about Sideshow Bob finally killing Bart, which I like the basic idea of, but it doesn't really go anywhere. It just kind of results in Sideshow Bob killing and reanimating Bart over and over again. It's not really funny or that scary, it's just kind of gross. This is definitely the best of the 3 segments though, if only due to Kelsey Grammer's wonderful performance in Sideshow Bob. But the second segment, Homerzilla, might be the weirdest segment in all of Treehouse of Horror. So it starts out like one of those old cheaply made Godzilla movies. It's not really that funny, but I can at least see what it was going for. And about halfway through, it cuts to some executives watching the movie. Then they decide to remake the movie, and at this point, it just feels so far removed from the original idea of the segment. There's nothing horror or Halloween themed about it either, which I could maybe excuse if it was actually funny, but it's not. We then end on a segment about Lisa and Milhouse gaining superpowers, which in concept is actually very similar to a segment from Treehouse of Horror 10 where Bart and Lisa get superpowers, but where that segment actually did something with the concept and had fun with it. this just goes nowhere. All that really happens is that Milhouse starts abusing his power, but then it turns out Maggie has superpowers too for some reason. And then she starts abusing them, and then it ends. Overall, there were some decent ideas in this episode, but 2 of the segments didn't go anywhere, and the one that did go somewhere just went completely off the road. I don't know what happened with that one. For the second best, we have Treehouse of Horror 4. This one's a classic. The first segment, The Devil and Homer Simpson, is definitely my favorite of the 3. Just the idea of making Flanders the devil is such a good concept. I love how at first Homer actually outsmarts the devil by not eating the last piece of donut, but then he just can't help himself. And the way they animate Homer descending into hell looks absolutely gorgeous. And of course, Homer's head becoming a donut at the end is just comedy gold. The second segment, Terror at 5.5 Feet, is a parody of the classic Twilight Zone episode, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, but it still manages to do its own thing with the concept. I love Bart's slow descent into madness, as well as how stupidly ignorant everyone else on the bus is. And the Dracula segment is pretty great as well. Burns as a vampire is a really fun combination, and there's some great lighting and atmosphere in this one. Plus, it has the super fun happy slide, which is just an incredible joke. Treehouse of Horror 4 is just a classic episode, without a doubt one of the best. And the worst Treehouse of Horror episode? You guys saw it coming. It's Treehouse of Horror 22. All 3 of the segments here are just awful. The first segment is about Homer being bit by a spider, which causes him to become paralyzed. Which of course means that he can only communicate with people through farting. Yeah, this segment is basically just one big fart joke. Even if you do find farts funny, it just gets old very quickly. But then it ends with Homer being bit by another spider and becoming Spider-Man, but he still farts, which is super hilarious. The second segment is probably the least awful of the 3, but it's still not very good. It's about Homer pretending to be God and convincing Flanders to kill people he doesn't like. I guess it's not the worst thing ever, but there are so many other Treehouse of Horror segments about characters going on murderous rampages that this one really doesn't stand out in comparison. There's also some pretty lame jokes in it, like how Flanders killing Patty and Selma is, for some reason, a parody on Roadrunner cartoons. Or the joke at the end that, lol, Maud has been sleeping with the devil, haha. But the final segment is probably my least favorite Treehouse of Horror segment of all time. And guess what? It's an Avatar parody. It's about Bart being turned into an alien and going on this alien planet to get a drug called Hilarium, which, if sprayed in an audience's face, will make them laugh instantly, which is probably something this episode needed. However, Bart ends up falling in love with one of the aliens. Their relationship is so boring and so unfunny, and the most uncomfortable part of it is that Bart and the alien actually have sex, which is just really gross and weird considering that Bart is 10. Like, I know he was in the alien's body, but still, the fact that he's a 10-year-old boy having sex is just really uncomfortable. Especially since we don't know the actual age of the alien lady he was dating. Anyways, it results in the aliens having this big fight scene with a bunch of humans, and I just don't care anymore. This final segment just feels like it drags on for way too long, and nothing about it is funny or scary or anything. Overall, Treehouse of Horror 22 is not only the worst Treehouse of Horror episode, but in my opinion, one of the worst Simpsons episodes I've ever seen. It's that bad. I didn't laugh once throughout this entire freaking thing, nor did it get me into the Halloween spirit. I'm done talking about this one, just don't watch it. It's abysmal. And my favorite Treehouse of Horror episode? You guys saw it coming. It's Treehouse of Horror 5. What is there to say about this one that hasn't been said before? It is just iconic. In fact, I'd argue that the 3 segments from this episode are the 3 best Treehouse of Horror segments of all time. With the first one, The Shinning, being my personal favorite Treehouse of Horror segment ever. I haven't even seen The Shining, and yet I love this one to death. Because unlike a lot of the other parodies, like the Stranger Things one from Treehouse of Horror 30, you don't need to watch the original source material in order to understand what's going on. It's still a great story in of itself. There is some absolutely gorgeous lighting and cinematography in this one. Homer's facial expressions are so well animated and so funny to look at. There's some pretty hilarious lines in this one too, such as, "The blood usually gets off on the first floor," and Lisa asking Marge if Homer's gonna kill them, with Marge replying with, "Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see." And seeing Homer trying to kill his family is genuinely terrifying. But the second segment, Time and Punishment, ain't too far behind this one. I love time travel stories, and seeing Homer constantly screw up the future is really fun. And there's a lot of creativity in the visuals of all of the different futures Homer creates. The fact that every little thing that Homer does in the past affects the future is actually pretty accurate to how time travel would work. And the final segment, Nightmare Cafeteria, is probably the scariest segment in all of Treehouse of Horror. The concept of the school staff cannibalizing its students is genuinely terrifying. But there's also some great lighting and cinematography throughout this one too. This episode also features the amazing running gag of groundskeeper Willie being killed in every segment. Overall, Treehouse of Horror 5 is not only my favorite Treehouse of Horror episode, but in my opinion, one of the best Simpsons episodes of all time. It's a good mix of both hilarious but also genuinely dark that makes it a really fun watch during Halloween time. It's just perfect. So, what are your favorite and least favorite Treehouse of Horror episodes, and what movies or shows do you typically watch during Halloween time? Please let me know in the comments and have a happy Halloween. Kirby, out.